Chapter 5200. He put one hand on the man's shoulder and leaned forward, laughing in a low voice. How is this related to the word beauty? Even if you want to be a hero saving a damsel in distress, shouldn't you find a prettier one? Otherwise, if she were to offer her body to you, wouldn't you be at a disadvantage? This young master's standards are very high. Offer her body. That also depends on the face and figure. The man smiled evilly. He looked at the girl in front of him and shook his head. This girl only has a quick-witted aura. However, her face is nothing special. As for her figure, she is like a little bean sprout. She hasn't grown at all. I, young master, can't eat her. The few men were chatting and laughing. Take it all. They were teasing. But they didn't know that the people over there who seemed to be eating pastries and listening to a book. The girl heard everything they said. Coincidentally, the people listening to the book below were applauding, so she also smiled and applauded. She didn't even look in the direction of those people, and just let them look at her. Until she heard the table over there shouting for the waiter to add more tea, she turned her head and shouted, "Waiter, add more water." She naturally looked around and happened to look at the table of men dressed in embroidered robes. They were all looking at her with an inexplicable smile. When she saw them, she also raised her face and smiled back at them. Come. The waiter came forward and added water for her. He walked to the table not far away, put a new pot of tea on their table, and then left. The girl drank a mouthful of tea, turned her head and continued to listen to the book, and listen to the voices over there. The few of them continued to drink tea and chat. Look, when that girl saw us, she immediately smiled like a love-struck fool. I guess she has never seen a man with such a handsome appearance like me. A man in luxurious clothes said shamelessly, and raised his chin, showing a proud expression. In that case, why don't you go and ask that girl to come over and sit? The man in luxurious clothes with a somewhat sinister face said, and gestured to that side. However, the evil smile on his face changed slightly in the next moment. His smile was a little stiff, and his eyebrows were slightly furrowed. The figure that was originally leaning lazily on the chair also sat up straight at this moment, as if he was suppressing something. What's so difficult about that? Look at me. The man in luxurious clothes stood up with a smile, but as he stood up, the next moment, a sound was heard. Puff! A loud fart entered everyone's ears. At this moment, the middle-aged storyteller on the first floor was at the most exciting part of his story. All the guests on the first floor held their breaths and listened without making a sound. Therefore, this sudden loud fart was heard by almost everyone in the tea house. For a moment, all of them were stunned. They raised their heads and looked upstairs in the direction of the sound. At the table where the few men were sitting, at this moment, they all looked like they were enduring, as if there was a gust of air flowing in their stomachs, and they wanted to find a place to come out. They were holding it in, but the more they held it in, the more anxious they became. Especially the man who farted, as if he did not expect to do such a thing in front of everyone. For a moment, his face turned red, and he could not control the air flowing in his stomach. Chapter 5201. It stinks. She pinched her nose with a look of disdain and fanned herself with one hand. Her eyes, however, carried a smile as she stared at the men whose faces had turned red from holding back their desire. Hearing the sound, the people below looked on in astonishment and began to discuss. Those few are dressed in brocade robes. They should be the young masters of aristocratic families. Why are they farting in public? How rude of me. Among them, the man in brocade robes with a sinister face was embarrassed when he heard the words below. In the next moment, he quickly set up a sound barrier. The girl called the waiter over to settle the bill, then left with a disgusted look on her face while covering her nose and mouth. Looking at her, the young masters in brocade robes wanted to find a hole to hide in. As for the people in the tea house, they felt the air flow in their stomachs. Although the sound barrier was set up and no one else could hear it, they sat there and farted. This made the young masters embarrassed and angry. Other than glaring at each other, they couldn't find a good solution. Why is it like this all of a sudden? Did she eat something unclean? A man said as he smelled the stench in the air. His entire face fell. There was nothing more sullen than this. Someone must have done something to it. Otherwise, why would it be like this? The sinister man's face was ashen. Thinking of the young girl who just left, his face darkened. It's that woman who looks like a bean sprout, he said through gritted teeth. Her. How is that possible? She sat there and didn't take a step away. Another person said in disbelief. Besides, we don't have any enmity with her. No. Could it be that she heard what we said about her? That's impossible, right? Another man in brocade robes said. As soon as he finished speaking, another loud fart was heard. His face turned red again. Go after her. Don't let her get away. As they spoke, they immediately stood up. But as soon as they stood up, their faces changed again. Let's go. They couldn't stay here forever. They had to catch that woman first. As a result, the people downstairs saw the silhouettes of those young masters leaving. At the same time, a few loud farts could be heard in the air, and now. He was already humming a tune as he headed towards the Shao clan. Is this the place? She looked at the door of the Shao family and knocked on it. Who is it? The gatekeeper opened the door and saw a young girl. He immediately smiled and asked, Are you Miss Yun? Yes. The child nodded in response. Miss Yun, please come in. The gatekeeper quickly opened the door and invited her in. At this moment, a middle-aged man also walked out quickly. He looked at Yun Chi and said with a smile, Miss Yun, I'm the housekeeper of the mansion. Young master told me to ask Miss Yun to rest in the courtyard when you arrive. Okay. His son responded and followed the housekeeper as he looked around the room. After reaching the courtyard, he lay down on the bed to rest. Hence, she didn't know that in the evening, a man in brocade robes sneaked in from outside and headed towards her courtyard. 7. Xiao Junyan came to her courtyard. It was quiet, so she went up and knocked on the door. Chapter 5202. I haven't been able to accompany you for a good stroll today, but I heard them say that there is a lantern festival in the city tonight, so I thought of accompanying you. He smiled and looked at her. Are you interested in going? Since we have nothing to do, let's go take a look. She said with a smile, closed the door, and walked towards him. When the two of them left the mansion, a few young men and women poked their heads out to take a look. One of the young women's eyes shone brightly as she said, I heard from my father that he is the young master of the Main family. He is the most outstanding person in the younger generation of the Main family. Another boy asked, Who is the girl beside the young master? Is she also from the Main family? No, I heard from the gatekeeper that her surname is Yun, and she is a friend of the young master. Another boy said, and looked at them, There is a lantern festival in the city tonight, shall we go take a look? Sure. I'll go call Big Brother. The girl said, and was about to turn and leave, but was stopped by the people beside her. Xiao, you don't have to go. It seems that cousin ate something outside and had a stomachache. When he came back, he kept farting, and now he is locked in the courtyard, and no one is allowed to go near him. The boy said, and a smile flashed across his eyes. Ah. Is that so? Then did the doctor go and take a look? The girl was stunned, as if she did not expect this. Yes, the doctor in the residence has gone to take a look. You don't have to worry, aren't we going to the Lantern Festival? Let's go. With that, the few of them walked out of the residence together. Once night fell, the lights in the city lit up, especially the colorful lanterns hanging along the streets, forming a unique scenery. Whether it was the elderly, children, or young men and women, they all came to the lantern festival early in the morning. Looking at the lively crowd and the hawkers shouting along the streets, they seemed to be more energetic than usual. Xiao Zhenyan walked half a step behind Yunqi, blocking the people around her, so that she would not be knocked down. There were children running on the streets, laughing and joking as they bumped into them. Seeing this scene, Xiao Zhenyan reached out and hugged her. "Be careful." He pulled her to his side. Looking at the laughing children running past, he lowered his head to look at Yunqi, who had retreated from his arms, and a gentle look flashed across his eyes. "There are many people at the Lantern Festival, be careful not to be knocked down." Sun looked up at him and happened to meet his soft eyes. Her heart moved, and she nodded with a smile. "Okay, I know." Ever since there were many people, he had been standing half a step behind her to protect her, preventing the people around her from bumping into her. This considerate action made her feel strange. "Come, let's go take a look." As he said that, he reached to hold to her to the front. His big hand to him, Yunqi, to say, "Xiao xiao, xiao xiao, xiao xiao." Xiao xiao to xiao xiao, xiao xiao, xiao xiao, xiao xiao, to xiao xiao to say, to xiao xiao, xiao xiao, xiao 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 xiao, xiao xiao, sai oxy 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 auto xiao. Looking at the hand that was being held, he was slightly startled. He wanted to withdraw his hand, but he saw that his ears were red and his face was slightly tense. He didn't even dare to look back at him. She was no longer the little girl who didn't know anything. As she grew older, she naturally understood a little about love between a man and a woman. Chapter 5203. Although she could feel it after interacting with him along the way, she was still a little hesitant about it. Since young, she had only treated him like an older brother, but now that she vaguely knew what he was thinking, she did not know how to deal with it. "Little Seven, what kind of lantern do you like?" Xiao Zhenyan asked. Seeing that she did not shake off his hand, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the lanterns hanging along the street and saw a fox lantern. She smiled and pointed at the lantern. "That one is for a little fox." Looking in the direction she was pointing, Xiao Zhenyan's gaze landed on the fox-shaped lantern and he said to her, "Wait for me for a moment." As he said that, he let go of her hand and walked towards the lantern. Tonight's lantern could not be bought with money, only riddles. After Xiao Zhenyan looked at the riddles, he reported the answer to the owner of the lantern and took the lantern from the owner's hands. At this time, Little bought a fox mask for the Lantern Festival and put it on after paying for it. She saw Xiao Zhenyan walking back. "For you." Xiao Zhenyan handed the fox lantern to her. "Thank you." Little Seven took it happily and raised her little face wearing the fox mask, asking, "Does it look good?" "Yes." Xiao Zhenyan nodded with a smile and asked, "Are you hungry? I'll bring you to eat something." So he took her hand and walked forward. Xiao Zhenyan brought her to a 3-story viewing pavilion and said, "From here, you can see the scenery of the city's Lantern Festival. Moreover, the things here are more unique. You can try them later." As she said that, she called for someone to take their order. Little Seven put the lantern aside and leaned against the railing to look at it. She saw a large piece of the night scenery. The lanterns reflected a beautiful light, and many people on the street had gathered to admire the lanterns. Xiao Zhenyan looked at the young girl who was looking at the lantern scene with great interest and his eyes softened. "Big brother Xiao, look, there are fireworks over there." Little Seven turned around and saw him looking at her with gentle eyes, making her a little embarrassed. She could not help but ask, "Big brother Xiao, why are you looking at me like that?" Xiao Zhenyan smiled and said, "Little Seven has grown up." He reached out to hold her hand and pulled her to sit down. He looked at her deeply and said, "Little Seven, I have something to say to you. Hearing this, Yunqi straightened her back and looked at him. She said, all right, go ahead. I'm listening. I thought perhaps it was because of her pure and trusting gaze, but for a moment, he couldn't say the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Hee. She looked at him and said with a smile, Big Brother Xiao, actually, I feel that you seem to have changed a lot after you traveled. He had originally mustered up the courage to say the words, but after hearing her words, he couldn't help but swallow them. He looked at her deeply and asked, have I changed? Was it for the better? Or has it become bad? She's changed. She's not so cold anymore. Naturally, she's better. She looked at him and said with a smile, when I first met you, you were cold and expressionless to everyone. But after you went traveling, you gradually changed, just like. Chapter 5204. She looked at him with a smile and said, there's less of that unapproachable aura, and more of a human touch. Moreover, you didn't like to smile in the past, but now there's more smiles on your face. Hearing this, the corners of Xiao Junyin's lips curled up slightly and said, that's because I'm traveling outside and no longer confined to one side of the world. I've seen more of the world, and my outlook is naturally different. That's why I said I have to travel more. But, Big Brother Xiao, don't you need to go back to the family to take over the matters? Can you continue to travel outside like this? She asked curiously. There are old ancestors guarding the family, and the family head handling all kinds of matters. There's also Junheng helping out. Although there are some who urge me to go back, I still want to take a look around. As he spoke, he took a sip of tea. He had always rarely asked about the family's matters, and also rarely cared about them. This time, if his second uncle hadn't sent a message to him, asking him to make a trip to deal with it, he wouldn't have come here. Oh right, there's an opportunity to gain experience this time, I wonder if you're interested. He said. What opportunity to gain experience? She looked at him and asked. After coming here this time, I found out that the dispute was because of the discovery of a secret realm. All the forces in Mountain View City want to fight for the ownership of this secret realm. But after I arrived today, I discussed with the other family heads, and finally decided to open the secret realm and let the people of each family go in to explore. As for what they get in the secret realm, it can only be considered as an opportunity for each person. As he spoke, he looked at her and said, the matter still needs to be confirmed, but it's more or less like this, so I want to ask if you're interested. Go in and take a look. Perhaps, there will be unexpected gains. Hearing this, she blinked and asked, then if I get something in the secret realm, will it be counted as mine? Or will I have to hand it over? Xiao Junyin smiled and said slowly, since it's an opportunity for each person, then naturally it'll be obtained by each person, and there's no need to hand it over. However, this matter will also be dangerous and murderous, after all. Snatching and robbing, this kind of thing was too common. Hearing this, her eyes lit up. That's great. I like this kind of secret realm the most. Big Brother Xiao, when can we go? Also, can I enter even though I'm not a member of your clan? It should be within the next few days. As for going in, that shouldn't be a problem. He continued, when the time comes, I'll go in with you. Okay. She answered happily. Not long after, there was a knock on the door, and a few beautiful women came in with dishes. After placing the dishes on the table, they quietly retreated. Because of this interruption, Xiao Junyin did not continue with what she had not said earlier. Instead, she picked up food for her from time to time. When the two of them were about 70% full, they put down their chopsticks. His eyes lit up as he looked down at the lantern festival not far away. His voice carried a hint of excitement as he said, There seems to be a fight over there. Seeing that she wanted to join in the fun, Xiao Junyin shook her head helplessly. When others saw a fight, they would stay far away from it, but she wanted to get closer. Big brother Xiao, let's go take a look. It's good for digestion. She turned back to look at him and said as she put the lantern into her space. Chapter 5205. In a restaurant, a few men were drinking wine and chatting. Speaking of which, we haven't seen each other for a few years, right? One of the men looked at the other three. Yes, we haven't seen each other for a few years. I didn't expect to meet the few of you when the family sent me out. Shinshichi shook his head and smiled. He looked at them and asked, how have you been these few years? Have you been in the family all this time? Sigh. It's such a sad story. Another person said, back then, when he was called back, guess what happened? The elders actually threw me into the training camp. TSK. I was only there for a year. A year. I was almost skinned alive. After I went back, I was sent to manage the family business. All I had to do was look at a pile of account books. It was so boring. Another man said. He looked at Shinshichi and said, what about you? I haven't heard much about you these few years. Shinshichi glanced at them and said, you were all busy with your own things. Who asked about me? Besides, you didn't expect to meet him here either, did you? The three of them looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. One of them said, during those years when I traveled around with you, I also caused a lot of trouble outside. So when I went back, the elders gave the order that I can no longer contact those bad friends of mine. Otherwise, they would throw me into confinement. So I can't do anything about it. My family is watching me closely. It's the same. Another person added, my family also gave me the same order. They didn't know who you guys were and thought that I was a loose cultivator. But I thought that if we didn't contact you guys, we wouldn't be in the same situation. Anyway, we'll have the chance to meet again in the future. Look, didn't we accidentally bump into each other today? As he said that, he started to laugh. But I'll say this first. Although we are friends, we won't give in to each other for the treasures in the mystic realm. Another man said and looked at the three of them. That's what I was thinking. Another man said. Shinshichi glanced at the three of them and revealed a lazy smile. Of course. We haven't seen each other for a few years. This is a good opportunity for us to practice. What do you think? Let's do it. Who's afraid of who? That's right. Back then, our strength was on par. Now, old Shin, I think I'm better than you. There's no point in saying that. Let's see how capable you are when the time comes. As Shinshichi spoke, his gaze swept over and he couldn't help but raise his brows. Look, it's that young master of the Xiao family, Xiao Junyan. It really was him. He even had a little girl with him. Are you bringing a little girl to look at the lanterns? The gazes of the four of them landed on Xiao Junyan and Cloud 7. They had seen Xiao Junyan today, but they had not seen that young lady before. If we have an opponent, then this Xiao Junyan is definitely a big one and cannot be underestimated. According to what I know, this person is the one with the most potential among the younger generation of the Xiao family. Especially in these few years, his reputation has been gradually rising outside, and he is in the limelight. Chapter 5206. Hearing this, the other three looked at each other and smiled, saying, how many years has it been? You're still thinking about that little girl. But that's true, we've been traveling outside for so many years, when have we ever fallen into the hands of others? What's more, it's a little girl. Back then, when the few of them were traveling outside, they had met that little girl called Yunqi. The few of them had suffered at her hands and after that incident, they could not find her. It was no wonder that Shinshichi still remembered that mischievous little girl from back then. One must know that even the few of them could still remember the scene from back then vividly. Speaking of which, I've heard of someone called Yunqi all these years, but I don't know if it's the same person. Shinshichi said as he played with the cup in his hand. You mean that little disciple of the Qing Emperor, Yunqi? They shouldn't be the same person, maybe they just have the same name. Another person said. I've heard of that disciple of the Qing Emperor as well. The Qing Emperor dotes on her very much and even obtained a deity whip for her as a weapon of self-defense. Another man said, but it's said that her background is also very mysterious. The three disciples of the Qing Emperor, no one knows which aristocratic family they come from. Hey, look, there seems to be a fight over there. Another person nudged his friend beside him and said, since we have nothing to do, why don't we go and take a look? Hence, the few of them agreed, paid the bill and left the restaurant, heading towards the crowd gathered on the streets to watch the show. When Xiao Zhenyan followed Yunqi to the front, she saw that among the group of people fighting, were the disciples of the Xiao family's side branch. Besides a young girl who was shouting anxiously at the side, the other 2 or 3 youths were already injured, blood seeping from the corners of their mouths and their eyes swollen. Apart from them, the other 4 youths obviously had the upper hand, at least they did not look as wretched as the 2 of them. Seeing this scene, he did not make a move, nor did he shout for them to stop, but just followed beside Yunqi and watched. Fighting when one's skills were inferior, as long as no one died, then let them fight. Yunqi's eyes shone brightly as she watched them fight. Watching others fight, she felt her hands itching. After she entered the Xiao clan, she went to the guest courtyard to rest. Thus, she did not see anyone else from the Xiao clan. Thus, she did not recognize that 2 of the people fighting in front of her were from the Xiao clan. Those 3 people are slightly weaker than those 4 people. In addition, they have 1 more person, so they have the upper hand in terms of numbers. If they continue fighting, they will only be able to suffer. Sun rested his chin on his hand as he spoke. His gaze was fixed on the people who were fighting in front of him. These people are all sons of aristocratic families, so they know when to stop. At most, they'll only have some superficial wounds. Xiao Zhenyan said slowly, her eyes also falling on the people in front of her. Big brother Xiao knows them. From his words, it seemed that he knew those people. She couldn't help but look at him. Xiao Zhenyan was about to speak when she heard a voice. Big brother Xiao. When Xiao Xiaolin saw him, her eyes lit up and she hurriedly ran towards him. Xiao Zhenyan glanced at him indifferently, not saying a word. Sun blinked his eyes and looked at the beautiful girl with interest. They even knew each other. Chapter 5207. When they are tired, they will naturally stop. Xiao Zhenyan indifferently said as she clasped her hands behind her back, not intending to stop them. There were quite a number of people in the surroundings. Seeing them fighting there, those who felt that the matter was not big enough were still drinking at the side. Although those 7 people in the middle were fighting, but they also knew propriety and did not use weapons, only clenching their fists and beating the other party to death. The sound of fists hitting the body, hearing it, Yunqi felt heartache for those 3 youngsters. While she was watching, she saw a trace of ruthlessness in the eyes of one of the youngsters in embroidered clothes. His clenched fist seemed to be suffused with a trace of cold light, and when he was punching the head of one of the youngsters who was pressed on the ground, she could not help but suck in a cold breath. That youngster's mind was also vicious, hiding needles in his fist. Was he trying to kill the youngster on the ground? Just when she was about to step forward and stop them, Xiao Zhenyan who was beside her moved her palm and slapped towards that youngster. At the same time, a chi blade also shot out, accurately hitting that youngster's clenched fist. With a bang sound, that youngster who was holding the needles in his fist cried out in pain and fell several meters away. Pfff. A mouthful of blood spurted out, making those people who were fighting in a group to stop in shock. Third young master. The other 3 people quickly stopped and ran over to help him up. As for the 3 Xiao family disciples, their faces were also filled with confusion. When they saw that it was Xiao Zhenyan, they finally regained their senses and hurriedly helped each other to stand properly. Lowering their heads, they called out in shame, young lord. Not only did they lose in a street fight, they were also seen by their young master. They really wanted to find a hole to hide in. Yu secretly sighed in relief. Looking at one of the youngsters of Xiao family, he really had a narrow escape. Frowning again, she looked towards that youngster who was vomiting blood. It was really strange, such a youngster was so young, but his mind was so vicious. What would happen when he grew up? However, it seemed that there was someone who had made a move just now. She looked towards the direction of the crowd and saw that there were 4 outstanding men in the crowd. When she saw those 4 people, her eyes shrunk and she quickly shifted her gaze away and shrank her body. Heavens! It was actually Shinshichi and those few people. Enemies on a narrow road. How could they meet here? Xiao Zhenyan also glanced in the direction of Shinshichi and the others. Seeing that they were looking at her, she nodded her head slightly in greeting. In the next moment, she stepped forward and looked at the youth who was vomiting blood. She asked in a low voice, "Which family are you from?" He thought it was just a small fight, but he didn't expect this young man to be so murderous. When those few people saw the imposing Xiao Zhenyan, they could not help but take a step back. Their lips twitched, but they did not report their family names. Young master, the one who vomited blood is the 3rd young master of the Shin family's 2nd branch. The one supporting him on the left is also a disciple of the Shin family. The other 2 are from the Qin family. A youth from the Xiao family said. These people were usually not on good terms with them. Tonight, they bumped into each other at the Lantern Festival and even provoked them verbally. Both sides had a disagreement and fought. Unexpectedly, they lost. In the end, the young master had to step in. It was really embarrassing. At this moment, the youth still did not know that he had just taken a trip to the gates of hell. If not for the fact that Xiao Zhenyan and the rest happened to be here, he would probably have died here today. Young Master Xiao. Shinshichi walked out with 3 good friends beside him. Chapter 5208. Shinshichi did not look at him. Instead, he looked at Xiao Zhenyan and said, "Tonight's matter is the Shin family's fault. I will bring this boy back and give the Xiao family an explanation." Although the few families had conflicts of interest, there was no bad blood between them. If it was a small fight, there was no need to care. But the Shin family's disciple had tried to kill them in secret. If Xiao Zhenyan exposed this matter on the streets, it would be difficult for the Shin family to establish themselves in the city in the future. After all, stabbing people in the dark was the action of a villain. It was a disgrace to the world. Xiao Zhenyan glanced at him and nodded. Sure. After saying that, he did not look at anyone else. When he turned around, he saw that Cloud 7, who was standing in the crowd, had disappeared. His eyes flashed slightly as he glanced around without leaving a trace. Seeing that there was no one around, he strode away. The few youths and girls from the Xiao family hurriedly followed. Behind them, not only did the Shin family's disciple lower his head when he saw Shinshichi, even the 2 Qin family's disciples lowered their heads. Because, beside Shinshichi, their Qin family's 3rd master had a cold expression on his face. Late at night, in the Shin family's hall, Shinshichi sat on the main seat and drank tea. The Shin family's branch family head also sat on the right side of the main seat. The Shin family's elders sat below. In the middle of the hall, kneeling was that youth. The 3rd young master of the Shin family's 2nd branch. Young Master 17, what is going on? One of the elders asked. No one knew why he had called them over and made a junior kneel in the middle. Let him speak. Shinshichi did not even raise his head. He gently picked up the teacup lid and scraped the tea. Speak. What is going on? The Shin family's 2nd master shouted in a deep voice. He stared at his son who was kneeling in the middle. Chen Nan and the others went to the Lantern Festival. We bumped into a few people from the Shao clan. We got into a fight because of a disagreement. The people from the Shao clan weren't our opponents. Later on, the young master of the Shao clan injured me. 17th uncle also came out and brought me back. The young man lowered his head and finished his story intermittently. Hearing this, Shinshichi curled his lips. His expression was indifferent, and no one could guess what he was thinking. When everyone present heard this, they were stunned. After exchanging glances with one another, Second Master Shin looked at 17 Shin and asked, 17 young master, is that true? The others also looked at Shinshichi, feeling puzzled. If things were really as he said, then this should be a quarrel between the younger generation. How did it reach the point where all the elders of the clan were present? Shinshichi put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the kneeling youth. He said, I gave you a chance. Hearing this, the young man's heart trembled and he lowered his head even more. When the others heard Shinshichi's words, their hearts sank. They had a feeling that things weren't as simple as what Shinshichi had said. Shinshichi stood up and walked in the hall with his hands behind his back. He said, the Shin family is one of the top families with 100 years of history. The foundation of the family is not to oppress others with martial arts, but to win others over with virtue. Shinshichi glanced at them and said, the Shin family has countless branch families. Although they are not part of the main family, they should be aware of this. However, I did not expect that on this trip here, I would see a junior of the Shin family. He is so young but he is so vicious. Chapter 5209. The young man's face turned pale. He didn't expect that he would know. When the elders of the Shin family heard this, their faces turned serious. Second Master Shin's heart sank. He stepped forward and grabbed his son's shoulder, lifting him up. He asked in a low voice, you want to kill the Shao family's junior? Or at the Lantern Festival on the street? Father, I. His voice trembled, unable to speak. Shinshichi walked slowly to the main seat and sat down. He said, Immortal cultivators, it's not that we can't kill people out of spite. It's just that even if we want to kill, we have to do it openly and openly. But you? Hiding a needle in your fist and preparing to kill in the dark, your methods are shameful and your brain is stupid. If the Shao family's junior didn't die on the spot, the Shao family would still blame it on the Shin family. He looked at the young man in the hall and continued, if Shao Junyan told the truth on the street, how will the Shin family establish itself in Mountain View's central city in the future? If someone mentions it in the future, will they say that the Shin family's junior is vicious and tried to kill someone in the dark? How will the world view our Shin family? He took a sip of tea and said, I said that I will give the Shao family an explanation. You can discuss among yourselves how to give it. He stopped talking after that. At this time, the faces of the Shin family members were as black as they could be, especially the Shin family head. It was not easy for the main family to send someone over, and it was the highly valued 17th young master. They wanted to perform well, but they didn't expect the people below to cause trouble. Destroy his cultivation, and tomorrow in front of everyone in the family, give him 30 strokes and send him to the village. Shin family head said in a low voice. Hearing this, the young man's face turned ashen. He cried and begged, family head, 17th young master, I won't dare to do it again. Please, don't destroy my cultivation. I beg you, I won't dare to do it again. That when the second master of the Shin family heard the master's words, his face turned pale. He immediately knelt down and said, Master, 17th young master, elders, it's all my fault for not teaching him properly. That's why this unfilial son did such a thing. However, he's only 17 after all. If his cultivation is destroyed, he'll never be able to step onto the path of cultivation again. Master, 17th young master, elders, please be lenient with him. One of the elders couldn't bear it and looked at the patriarch. Patriarch, isn't crippling his cultivation a little too much? The family head looked at the two people kneeling on the ground. His eyes flashed as he looked at Shinshichi and asked, "Do you think it's okay to abolish his cultivation?" Shinshichi put down his teacup. He didn't reply to the clan lord's words. Instead, he looked at the youth below and said, "If it wasn't for Xiao Zhenyan and me, you would have taken the life of a junior of the Xiao clan. Now that I've crippled your cultivation to save your life, do you think this punishment is too heavy?" The young man's lips trembled, and in the end, he collapsed to the ground. He knew that he would not be able to preserve his cultivation today. The second master of the Shin family had wanted to plead for mercy, but when he heard Shinshichi's words, he couldn't say anything. Even if his cultivation was destroyed, at least he would still be alive. If he lived his life peacefully, it wouldn't be a problem for him to live for 100 years. When the patriarch saw this, he asked one of the elders to cripple his cultivation, and then brought him away to be locked up. He still had to suffer 30 strokes tomorrow. Chapter 52:10. In the Xiao family's guest courtyard. Sat in the courtyard with her chin in her hands. She could not understand why she would meet Shinshichi and the rest after so many years. But thinking about it, so many years had passed and she had grown up. He probably could not recognize her, right? Little 7. Xiao Zhenyan walked in and sat down at the table in the courtyard. "Why did you come back on your own?" "I met a few people who I played tricks on in the past. I was afraid that they would recognize me, so I came back on my own." She smiled embarrassedly and poured a cup of water for him as she asked, "Big brother Xiao, do you know Shinshichi and the rest?" Hearing this, Xiao Zhenyan was slightly surprised. He looked at her and said, "You mean Shinshichi and the rest? You knew them in the past?" "Actually, I don't really know them. I just met them on the road, and then I played a trick on them. At that time, they chased me all the way, but I shook them off. After so many years, I didn't expect to meet them again." Xiao Zhenyan smiled and said, "Then you're really something, to actually dare to make fun of the few of them. These people are all the prides of their clans. Although they are not the young lords of their clans, they are still people with great authority in their clans. This time, they have also come here because of the mystic realm. The person from the Shin family's main family is Shinshichi. This person is very meticulous and his methods of handling matters are very good. The person from the Qin family is Qin-san. He is the third son of the current Qin family head. His real name is Qin Tao. The other two are Jing Yuan and Yang Hao. This time, they should be going into the mystic realm as well." "Oh." Nodded and secretly calculated in her heart. If they were going in, what were the chances of meeting them? "You don't have to worry. They will not find trouble with you. After all, it was something that happened many years ago. Who knows, they might have already forgotten about it." Xiao Zhenyan said. I know." She nodded and replied with a smile. "Then you rest early." He stood up and said, then turned and walked out. After watching him leave, she stretched her back and went back to her room to rest. The next day, after eating breakfast, she strolled around the courtyard of the Xiao family. Then, she heard the servants of the residence say that the Shin family had arrived. Thus, she followed the crowd of onlookers to the front to take a look. In the front yard, 2 guards from the Shin family supported a young man who could not even stand properly as they followed behind Shinshichi. His cultivation has been crippled, and he has just received 30 strikes. I brought him here for you to take a look. He will be sent to a courtyard in the countryside. Shinshichi's voice carried a hint of laziness. It was as if the young man whose cultivation was crippled was not from the Shin family. Xiao family head had heard Xiao Zhenyan mention this matter last night, but he was still wondering how the Shin family would deal with it. He didn't expect that he would be crippled of his cultivation and banished. It had to be said that such a punishment was indeed not light. Looking at the youth who was being supported, there was still a trace of blood seeping out from his buttocks. His face was pale and he was on the verge of death. To be able to do such a thing to a disciple of his own family, he couldn't help but feel slightly shocked. This kind of strict family management method was not something an ordinary person could do. It was no wonder that the Shin family would give a thumbs up whenever they were mentioned outside. This kind of family style really made people respect them. Chapter 52:11. Shinshichi pursed his lips and said, "Now that you've seen her, I won't stay any longer. Goodbye." He cupped his hands and walked out. As he walked out, he couldn't help but pause for a moment. His gaze paused on the face of a young girl who was looking at him from not far away. This young girl was the girl who had been by Xiao Junyan's side last night. Last night, she was wearing a fox mask. Today, she wasn't wearing a mask. This face and that pair of eyes were faintly familiar. However, he usually wouldn't forget the people he had met. But this young girl, he didn't remember seeing her before. So where did this sense of familiarity come from? Just as he was thinking about it, he saw the little girl blinking her beautiful eyes and raising a pure and innocent smile. It was this smile that made him suddenly remember. It was her. That cunning little girl from back then. When she saw Shinshichi looking at her, she blinked her eyes and smiled innocently. However, she did not know that it was this smile that made Shinshichi, who was about to leave, wave his hand and say, "Bring him back first." Then, he walked towards the nearby Shinshichi. Then, he walked towards her. Seeing this, Xiao Junyan's eyes flashed and she also walked towards Cloud 7. Ha! Why was he walking towards her? She had already shown such a friendly and innocent smile. What else did Shinshichi want? She muttered in her heart. Then, she saw Shinshichi stop in front of her. Cloud 7. Shinshichi called out this name. Although back then, he felt that this name was just a fake name, but since it came from her mouth, even if it was a fake name, she should still remember it. Ah! She was stunned and stunned. Seeing this, Shinshichi laughed softly. "It's really you." As he laughed, his originally handsome face became even more outstanding. "Little girl, you've made us look for you. I didn't expect to see you here after so many years." He seemed to be in a good mood. Staring at the young girl in front of him, he asked, "Why are you in the Xiao family? Are you from the Xiao family?" Hearing his words, she knew that he had recognized her. She couldn't help but touch her own face and ask doubtfully, "How did you recognize me?" "I've clearly grown up, and I'm different from when I was young." Shinshichi laughed out loud and flicked her forehead. "It's rare to see such a cunning little girl like you. How could I not recognize you? Little 7, why are you here?" Xiao Junyan walked over and intentionally separated Shinshichi. When Shinshichi saw this, he raised his eyebrows and sized up the two of them. Then, he looked at Cloud 7 and said, "Little girl, it's rare for us to meet. Why don't we go out for a walk? I've also invited Chin-san and a few others, the ones you met back then." Seeing this, she couldn't help but blink. After thinking for a moment, she replied, "All right." In any case, she was just an idle person in the Xiao family. Since he recognized her, he didn't care about what happened back then and just treated it as making a few more friends. "Brother Xiao." Cloud 7 looked at Xiao Junyan and was about to speak when Shinshichi interrupted him. Chapter 52:12. Little girl, young Master Xiao is a busy man. He must have a lot of things to deal with. Let's go our own way. I'll send you back later. How about that? She had wanted to invite Xiao Junyan, but after hearing Shinshichi's words, she was stunned. She looked at Xiao Junyan, whose face had turned cold, and then looked at Shinshichi. After thinking for a while, she said, "Big brother Xiao, I'll go shopping with Shinshichi. You don't have to worry about me. I'll be back tonight. She knew that he was here to deal with the mystic realm. There were probably many things for him to discuss and arrange. She was going out with Shinshichi because she wanted to sit down and chat with them to see if they were going to the mystic realm as well. Secondly, it was good for her to make a few more friends. Alright, let's go, let's go. We were just talking about you yesterday. When Chen-san and the rest see you later, they will be very surprised. Shinshichi said with a smile and walked out. She smiled at Xiao Junyan and said, I'm going out to play. With that, she left with Shinshichi. Not far away, Patriarch Xiao and the rest were stunned when they saw this. They only knew that the girl came with young master. Her surname seemed to be Yun, but why did she seem to know Shinshichi? After leaving the Xiao family, Shinshichi looked at her with interest and asked, What's your relationship with Xiao Junyan? Why did you follow him to the Xiao family? When he saw you coming out with me, his face didn't look too good. She smiled and said, Big brother Xiao is my friend. We've known each other for many years. This time, I went down the mountain to travel, so big brother Xiao brought me here. Down the mountain. You've been living in the mountain all these years. No wonder we couldn't find any news of you after so long. Shinshichi glanced at her and said, You really know how to hide. Hee hee. She smiled and narrowed her eyes. I was wondering if your name, Yunqi, was a fake name. Now it seems that it is really this name. Then, he paused and looked at her and asked, You can't be the little disciple of Emperor Qing, Yunqi, right? Yes. She replied and said, My master is Emperor Qing. I've been cultivating in Cloud Sky Mountain all these years. No wonder. He sighed softly. I had some guesses back then, but I thought it was impossible. I didn't expect it to be the same person. Question mark. I thought you were all itinerant cultivators. Said Air with a smile. I didn't expect you guys to have such a background. I heard that your families are all top-century-old families. We have been loose cultivators for many years. We are used to being free. Later on, however, our family summoned us back. There is nothing we can do about it. As he spoke, he glanced at Cloud 7 and chuckled. But this time is also a coincidence. I came to Mountain View City and met a few companions I haven't seen for a long time. I even met you, little fox. This trip was not in vain. The two of them chatted as they arrived at a restaurant on the street. They went up to the second floor and entered a room. The three of them who were chatting inside were stunned when they saw the young lady that Shinshichi had brought in. It can't be. Old Shin, where did you kidnap this little girl from? Chen-san's eyes widened in astonishment. Us men are drinking and chatting. Is it appropriate for you to bring a delicate lady over? Xing Yuan gave Shinshichi an odd look before looking at the young lady. Chapter 52:13. Hearing this, she smiled with her eyes narrowed, looking harmless as she stood beside Shinshichi. Shinshichi shook his head helplessly and smiled at them. Looks like you guys really didn't recognize her. Recognize who? Chen Tao asked. Although this little girl looks ordinary, with my eyesight, I will definitely not forget if I have seen her before. So I am sure that I have never seen this little girl before. As Xing Yuan spoke, he looked at Cloud 7 from head to toe. He paused for a moment and said, She looks a little like the little girl who was with Xiao Junyan last night. Little girl, what's your name? Why did you come out with old Shin? Aren't you afraid that he will kidnap you and sell you? Yang Hao looked at Cloud 7 and said teasingly. Cloud 7 looked at them with a smile and said, I haven't met anyone who dares to sell me for a long time. She smiled and sat down at the table. In terms of eyesight, you guys are not as good as Shinshichi. When the three heard this, they looked at each other. So, we have met before. Then tell us, what's your name? My name is Cloud 7. She said with a smile and saw the three of them staring at her with wide eyes. Yun, Cloud 7. Don't tell me you are the one I think you are. You are that fat baby from back then. That can't be. You are that little girl who was full of bad intentions back then. Hearing their words, Cloud 7's mouth twitched. She puffed up her cheeks and snorted in dissatisfaction. She said crisply, "How am I full of bad intentions? All these years, I have been studying and writing seriously. Even my master praised me for being full of ink." The three of them were curious. They stared at her and then looked at Shinshichi, who was sitting down with a smile. They asked, "Old Shin, where did you find this little girl?" "I met her at the Xiao family. She was traveling with Xiao Junyan." Shinshichi said and continued, "This little girl is really the youngest disciple of the Qing Emperor, Cloud 7. She has been on Cloud Sky Mountain all these years. No wonder we couldn't find her after so long. He's actually Emperor Qing's disciple?" The three of them were surprised as they looked at Cloud 7 and asked, "I heard that the Qing Emperor has 3 disciples and the one he dotes on the most is the youngest female disciple. I didn't expect it to be you." Hearing them mention her master, she sat up straight, raised her chin, and said proudly, "That's right. My master dotes on me the most." They were eating and chatting in the room. Air also asked them about the mystic realm. Hearing her bring up the matter of the mystic realm, the few of them exchanged glances before looking at her with strange expressions. "This Xiao Junyan even told you about this. So you're saying that you're also going to enter the secret realm?" Air looked at them and asked. "Of course. When the time comes, we will each bring a few people from our families to enter. But you, I advise you not to go in." Chen Tao looked at her and said, "Why? Could it be that only people from your clans are allowed to enter? Others can't go in?" Air asked. Chapter 52:14. Daughter smiled and narrowed her eyes. She said in a crisp voice, "I like dangerous places. Besides, I came down from the mountains to travel. Naturally, I need to practice. Besides, no one has set foot in there before. There should be a lot of good stuff. Or are you afraid that I'll go in and snatch all the things inside?" The few of them were stunned. They looked at each other and then laughed. Shinshichi smiled and said, "Little girl, we haven't seen each other for so many years. You're still as confident as ever. Just based on a little girl like you, what can you possibly snatch from inside? Let me tell you, the people who go in this time are the most powerful people in the family. You can't compare to them." Chen Tao said with a smile, his face full of disapproval. "You don't have to worry about that." Daughter said with a smile. "All right, let's not talk about this. Let's eat first. We'll bring you around the city later." Shinshichi said and picked up some food with his chopsticks. On this day, Daughter followed them around the city until the sky turned dark. The 4 of them then sent her to the main gate of the Xiao family. "Go in. Rest well for the next 2 days. If there's a chance in the future, come to our main house for a walk. It's much more interesting than here." Shinshichi said as his gaze fell on Cloud 7. "Thank you for today. I'll go in first. As for the future, we'll talk about it in the future." She smiled sweetly and waved at them. Then, she knocked on the door and walked in. "Let's go. Let's find a place to continue drinking," Shinshichi said with a smile and left with them. And in the Xiao family. After Daughter entered, she saw Xiao Junyan. She looked at the man standing in the courtyard in surprise and asked, "Brother Xiao, why are you here? You're back." Xiao Junyan walked up and glanced at her. She asked, "Did you have fun today?" Yes. Shinshichi and the rest brought me to many places to play. We even ate many snacks. I really had a good time today, she said with a smile. After interacting with them, she felt that Shinshichi and the rest were very fun. It's my fault. I didn't bring you out to have fun after coming back here, Xiao Junyan said apologetically. No, Brother Xiao also accompanied me to the Lantern Festival last night. Besides, Brother Xiao came back here to deal with something. How can he keep accompanying me to play? She said with a smile. Let me send you back to the courtyard, Xiao Junyan said as they headed towards the guest courtyard together. When he arrived at the guest courtyard where she was staying, he stopped in his tracks. I won't be going in. You should rest early. You'll need to be prepared for the secret territory in 2 days. Okay. After he left, she asked the servants to bring her hot water so she could bathe. 2 days later. Following Xiao Junyan and the other members of the Xiao family who had been selected to enter the mystic realm, they arrived at the mountain range. When they arrived, there were already many people waiting there. This time, people from 8 clans had come, and each clan was only allowed 20 people to enter. Therefore, everyone had been carefully selected. The reason why daughter could be here was also because of Xiao Junyan. Otherwise, the Xiao family would not have given up a place for her. Since everyone is here, let's begin, Shinshichi said as he looked at the people from the other clans. Chapter 52:15. Yu-er looked on and saw a crack in the mountain in front of her. That crack was like an illusory door. She couldn't see what was inside clearly. She only knew that it was full of mystery. One of the clans said, "Then we'll go first." As soon as he said that, the 20 of them took the lead and walked towards the crack. Their figures disappeared into the illusory world. With one of the clans going in, the others seemed to be afraid that they would be slower than the others. They also led their clans and went in. Shinshichi nodded at Cloud 7. He glanced at Xiao Junyan and smiled. Then, he followed them and went in first. Everyone, follow me, Xiao Junyan said, and led the people behind her towards the crack. After the group of people walked in, the crack gently closed and returned to its original appearance. The patriarchs of the various clans looked at each other, and after cupping their hands in respect, they also left. After going in, if they wanted to leave the secret realm, they only needed to crush the transmission jade token to return to their clans. Therefore, they didn't need to wait here. Instead, they went straight back to their clans. However, what those who entered the secret realm didn't expect was that once they entered, their original team members disappeared. Only they were left. After Xiao Junyan entered, he instinctively looked at Cloud 7. However, not only did she disappear, the others behind her were also gone. The surroundings weren't a forest or anything like that. Instead, it was a vast expanse of white as if there was nothing. He frowned slightly and his face darkened. He was careless. He didn't expect to be separated after entering this place. Now, he didn't know where Cloud 7 went. Thinking of this, he took out his communication jade and wanted to ask where she was. Unexpectedly, his communication jade seemed to be isolated. There was no movement at all. He took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his heart. Pursing his lips, he walked forward. On the other side, Yu-er looked at the peach blossom forest in front of her and was slightly stunned. Illusion. What appeared before her was the scene of the peach blossom dock in her memory. At this moment, she was standing among the peach blossoms. At a glance, all she could see was the color of flowers. She tapped her feet lightly and leaped into the air. She skimmed through the peach blossoms. After circling around, she revealed a sly smile. I was wondering what it was. So it's only this level of bewilderment array. She stood in the middle of the peach blossom forest and took out the god-beating whip from her space. She poured her spiritual power into the whip and shouted, "Break!" The whip was pulled out and made a very loud sound in the air. With a bang, it heavily hit the ground and a powerful aura surged out from the whip. With a whoosh, visible airflow splashed out. The peach petals on the ground and the petals on the tree flew up and gradually turned into specks of light before disappearing into the air. What entered his eyes was a verdant forest. A damp smell, accompanied by the smell of rotting leaves, assailed his nostrils. The dense and lush trees blocked the sunlight, filling the forest with a gloomy atmosphere. Even cultivators could feel a cold aura permeating the air, causing their pores to open and seep into their flesh. Chapter 52:16. In the air, a burst of chilly wind blew, and she faintly felt that something was approaching her, but it didn't get too close to her side, rather it was hiding and staring at her. Yu held the god-beating whip in her hand and laughed. "This secret territory seems to be very fun." The whip in her hand suddenly lashed out, and with a "pop" sound, it landed on a big tree not far away, and a layer of bark of that tree was immediately peeled off, leaving behind a trace. And the surrounding chilly aura also disappeared along with the lashing of this whip. She glanced at her surroundings and snorted lightly. Only then did she gather her energy and walk forward. However, she had only walked for a short distance when a group of ferocious beasts surrounded her and roared at her. Seeing this, Yu was all smiles as she put away the whip in her hand, and instead took out a dagger, and without waiting for that group of ferocious beasts to pounce on her, she took the initiative to pounce on them. Perhaps because they didn't expect that this human would dare to take the initiative to attack them, that group of ferocious beasts were stunned for a moment, then they also revealed their claws and pounced forward to bite her. However, after an incense stick's time, blood-curdling screams were unceasingly heard, and that group of ferocious beasts fled in all directions. On the ground, the smell of blood pervaded, and several corpses of ferocious beasts were lying there. Yu was currently digging for beast crystals, as well as cutting off the horns of ferocious beasts which had medicinal value. With her strength, in addition to the fact that she had powerful contracted beasts by her side, these ferocious beasts were unable to do anything to her, so all along the way, she was collecting things that seemed to be useful to her. But she was very surprised. After walking here alone for a day, she didn't meet a single person, as if she was the only person here. Along with the sky gradually darkening, that gloomy aura in the air became more and more dense, and in the forest, the roars of various ferocious beasts accompanied with wolf howls were reverberating from time to time, making people feel as if danger was around them. When the sky darkened, she laid down a formation in the surroundings, and sprinkled some insect repellent powder, then she lit a bonfire and rested beside the bonfire. As the night deepened, without knowing why, those beasts' roars disappeared, and what replaced it was a ghost-like faint sound, and the gloomy aura in the air also gradually became colder, making her who originally wanted to rest, have no choice but to be on guard. She knew that her body, since young, it was easy to attract these evil things, but her parents gave her a treasure to protect herself, so those evil things didn't dare to get close to her body. These years, indeed, those evil things didn't dare to get close to her. But tonight, she inexplicably felt somewhat panicked, so much so that the whip in her hand, as she vigilantly stared at the surroundings. Along with the night, she inadvertently took a nap. Just as she was about to fall asleep, a gust of cold wind blew by. The burning branches were extinguished as if someone had splashed cold water on them. A light smoke pervaded the air and enveloped the surroundings of Yu. Indistinctly, there was a strange and faint laughter that made people feel horrified. But regarding all this, Yu, who was always vigilant however, seemed to be unaware of it. Leaning against the big tree behind her, she slept soundly until her entire body was enveloped by that light smoke, as if she had disappeared within the forest. Chapter 52:17. Go away. Go away. In her sleep, Yu waved the whip in her hand, but that evil thing that was emitting a strange laughter kept entangling her again and again. She was anxious in her heart, but her whole body seemed to be unable to exert any strength. Even if she was waving the god-beating whip, she also felt that she couldn't exert any power. Delta. Such a pure heavenly spirit tea is really rare, especially this body tea is still so fresh and delicate. He. After waiting for thousands of years, I didn't expect that I would actually wait for such a rare heavenly spirit tea. Truly the heavens are helping me. The faint voice was hoarse and sounded very old, but that hoarse voice also had a trace of sharpness, accompanied by that strange and frightening laughter, truly made people's heart tremble. You couldn't see her surroundings, she only knew that something had been grabbing her leg, and even after she kicked it away, that thing tightly stuck to her leg. In an instant, she felt a chill on her back, and a kind of bone-chilling feeling filled her whole body, making her sweat even stood up. This body tea is really good. A body tea with blood and temperature, this kind of feeling is really good. That voice was filled with excitement, and layers of white chi rose from Yu's feet, tightly entangling her, as if wanting to strangle her to death. She was unable to move, and even felt that her body was becoming cold. That was a kind of bone-piercing cold feeling, little by little entangling her until it reached her neck and tightly strangled her. No, let go of me. Her whole body was out of control, and only that GY's cold aura was tightly strangling her body. She felt that breathing was getting more and more difficult, and her willpower was also gradually weakening, as if she would fall into endless darkness at any time. And at this time, that 1,000-year-old Y-ghost's voice was still calling in her ear, as if it wanted to hook out her soul and forcibly possess it. Master. She painfully called out, and closed her eyes. Everything seemed to have sunk into darkness, and at this moment, her whole body seemed to have been attached to by that GY ghost, and also at this moment, Emperor Qing, who was sitting cross-legged in Cloud Sky Mountain, suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold light and killing intent flashed through his deep eyes. He looked ahead as if he was looking at a certain place through the cave. The next moment, he closed his eyes and moved his hands in front of him. Inside the secret territory, under a big tree, where light smoke pervaded the air, Yu was sitting there. Her face was pale, and her clothes were soaked with cold sweat. Her body was lightly trembling, and everywhere she looked was pitch black. She was the only one left. However, at this moment, the everlasting green spirit Mu Axayan in her hair shone brightly. A beam of green light flashed past, and the Qing Emperor, who was originally in the Cloud Sky Mountain, appeared here. When he saw Cloud 7's pale face, the Lotus Supreme the Arch exuded a chilling aura. Murderous intent flashed across his eyes. At this moment, he was completely different from his usual indifferent self. He stretched out a finger and pointed at the center of Cloud 7's brows. In an instant, there seemed to be a shrill cry of agony in the forest. Who are you? How dare you ruin my plans? Chapter 52:18. Emperor Qing's voice was accompanied by a powerful aura of destruction. He supported the unconscious Yun Qi with one hand, while his other hand condensed spiritual power and grabbed something in the air. The surrounding Yin Qi seemed to be trapped at this moment, and his hand passed through this Yin Qi and grabbed a shadow of nothingness. The shadow had a blurry shadow, and a pair of green ghost fire eyes were opened wide in horror. It struggled to escape, and even increased its Yin Qi to the point that the surrounding branches and leaves were covered with a layer of ice, but it was still unable to escape from Emperor Qing's hands. Who are you? With its cultivation of 1,000 years, it was actually unable to escape from the hands of this person. This person's strength was terrifying, and it had never encountered anyone like this in the past 1,000 years. At this moment, it felt an indescribable fear, and a kind of aura of destruction wrapped around it. It was as if this 1,000-year-old ghost would be extinguished by this person in the next moment. Spare me. Your Excellency, spare me. It instinctively begged for mercy, not knowing that it would provoke such a terrifying existence by targeting this little girl with an innate spiritual body. It's too late. Emperor Qing's indifferent and cold voice was filled with killing intent. He stared at the 1,000-year-old ghost in his hands, and his hand, which contained a powerful aura, slowly tightened. It was as if there was a flame burning in his palm, burning the 1,000-year-old ghost alive. Ah! No! A mournful scream with unwillingness and resentment sounded in the night. The voice gradually weakened from its initial mournful shrill until the ghost was completely burned in his hands, leaving only 2 green pearls. He looked at the 2 pearls in his hands, and with a wave of his hand, the yin qi in the air dissipated. He lowered his head to look at the unconscious yin qi and frowned. Master. That it was unknown whether it was because the yin qi had dissipated, but her consciousness gradually recovered. However, she still did not open her eyes, but she kept calling for her master, and her hands tightly hugged his hand. Master. Her sleep was extremely restless. She felt that she had sunk into boundless darkness. That darkness was very gloomy and cold, freezing her whole body to the point that she couldn't exert any strength. Especially in that darkness, it was as if a pair of ghost hands were pulling her feet, trying to pull her inside. But at this moment, she seemed to see her master's hand reaching over and pulling her out of the darkness. The cold yin qi in her body was dispelled, and she gradually felt a trace of warmth. Since childhood, whenever she was in danger, her master would come out to save her. As long as her master was there, she would feel at ease. Emperor Qing sat beside her and let her sleep on his lap. He put one hand on her back and patted her gently, just like when she had nightmares when she was a child. He stayed by her side. The originally extinguished flame had already been reignited by him. With the temperature of the flame, her originally cold body also gradually warmed up, and her slightly knitted eyebrows also gradually loosened. When the sky gradually brightened, Emperor Qing looked towards a certain direction in the forest, and his eyes slightly moved. The next moment, he supported Yun Qi to lean against a tree, and his figure gradually disappeared. He changed into a streamer and landed on the 10,000-year-old Muaxan in Yun Qi's hair.